Genshin Impact 5.1's banners look interesting. With so many cool banners to choose from, it's very hard to choose who to spend your Primogems on. Today, I aim to help you decide who to spend your precious Primogems on, evaluating who'll get you the most bang for your buck depending on your account setup. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. A quick note before we begin. This video serves as a nice TLDR of who you should consider pulling for. I'll be making individual videos on each character that's coming up to evaluate their individual pros and cons more in depth, which will help you better decide whether you want them or not. Okay, cool, let's go. We'll begin with Xilonen, the new Geo 5-star character that'll be releasing in this version. She's a sword character who specializes in insane buffing, while also being able to provide healing to your on-field character. Her skill has almost got as much res shred in it as 4VV, and while her healing may be single character, it's still quite a sizable chunk of sustenance. She can also comfortably hold and proc 4-piece Ender City, providing everybody in the team an unconditional 40% damage bonus, which is absolutely insane. That's equal to the buffing of a Kazuha with 1000 DM, and compared to the Wind Lad, Xilonen buffs a whole other element, that being Geo. What I mean by this is that Kazuha can beef up Hydro, Pyro, Electro, and Cryo, yes? The big cat can buff all of those, plus Geo. That's pretty impressive, especially considering that she's going to make Navia so much better than she already is. Her heals are single character, but I think that they're going to be quality enough to still justify running her as a solo sustain in Farina teams. The same way that Bennett is a good healer for set comps because of how fast he heals, meaning that if you switch between characters often enough, fanfare will still be easy enough to keep up with. Xilonen will be in the same situation. She's going to be really nuts for both Nervalette and Navia mains. If you play either of those too frequently, then definitely consider shifting your gaze to the cat lady. Her main competition is Kachina and Archaic Petra Zhongli. She is better than Kachina, to put it plainly. The cat can trigger Cinder City just fine, while also offering her crazy amount of res shred plus healing. They can actually be used in the same team together if you want to play Xilonen as an on-field DPS, because then the Rock Kid will be able to proc Cinder City for her. In a DPS team, the Ocelot's not going to be wearing that set, so before you comment the sets don't stack, that's because you'd run Cinder on Kachina in such a case. Oh, that's the other thing. She also offers a DPS playstyle right out of the box at C0. No need to C6 her if you really like the character and want to see her on field. This offers some extra gameplay variety for you to have fun with, should you get bored of playing her regularly as a support. Enough getting sidetracked, I still need to talk about Archaic Petra Zhongli. It was brought to my attention in my Discord server, which you can join down below from either the description or pinned comment, that if you play the Geo Archon with 4-piece Archaic Petra, Xilonen then faces some competition, specifically for the Nervalette team, where you'll always get the Hydro Crystallize. He can provide 35% damage bonus with the 4-piece, and as for the res shred, the lad's got 20% in his skill. The main drawback is that he himself has to pick up the Crystallize Shard in order for the set effect to be procced. Additionally, only one element can be buffed by Petra at a time, though if you can manage all that, then Petra Lee ends up being a decent support. Yet, I still think Xilonen's worth getting even if you own Zhongli. If you max out her skill, then her unconditional res shred is higher than Zhongli's. To be fair, Rex Lapis's conditions for his shred is simply to have his shield up, but I don't think that gaining Xilonen's res shred is that much harder anyway. Zhongli also can't heal, which equals less team fanfare overall. Plus, Cinder City is far easier to proc than Archaic Petra, which has that condition of only proccing if the equipper themselves collects the Crystallized Shard. Cinder will also buff every teammate no matter what, whereas Petra only allows for one at a time. This matters a lot for teams such as Linny, where both himself and Farina are doing damage. That's even more relevant if your Hydro Archon has C2+, and is doing formidable enough damage for her shared account. Plus, while Petra is only 5% less than Cinder City, remember that pulling for Xilonen's signature means that you give even more damage bonus to your entire team. Also, buffs to herself. Xilonen's constellations are way more valuable than Zhongli's as well, plus being a healer is better than being a shielder right now thanks to this Farina-dominated meta of ours. The point of this is not for me to call Zhongli bad, I really like the unit, he's a brilliant yapper too. Besides, most people use him for a shield anyway in scenarios which are stagger heavy, such as fights against the Copper Duo. I more so wanted to say that yes, Xilonen is still worth it and is still an upgrade even if you already play Archaic Petra Zhongli. With that being said, I'm putting this cat lady up at S tier in terms of the value rankings for this patch. I cannot understate how strong she is. I believe that she will become an S tier unit in general. If you care about meta, then yes, this character is an absolute behemoth in terms of account value. You don't need any character to clear this game, but I won't sugarcoat how strong she is. Much in contrast to the powerful Xilonen, we have Chiori, a character that I do not recommend in the slightest. Hear me out. If you're an Itto main, then yes, she is good. Chiori will make your funny Beetle Man teams feel a lot stronger to play. She is truly in her element, no pun intended, I swear, when played in a construct-heavy team such as this. But there's an issue here. Itto really isn't the best character to work with. The guy is a serviceable DPS, don't get me wrong, but his power level really pales in comparison to modern-day Fontaine and even Null on DPSs. Chiori does boost up the team's overall damage, but even she herself isn't directly buffing Itto, she's simply acting as a strong sub-DPS. Even so, she will be your best bet for Itto teams, so know that if you want to play him, then yes, Chiori is worth your time. Yet, outside of that scenario, you don't want to pick this character up. She is very weak in all of her teams that she plays in, especially if you're stuck at C0. It used to be quote-unquote if you're stuck at C0 R0, but to the cutting edge of C tier's credit, the new not one craftable sword is good for her. It gave her a seriously much needed budget option. She's no longer best in slot in Navia teams because a level 20 4-piece Intercity Kachina is an upgrade over her, even if Chiori is C0 R1. I said R1 this time, as in a 5-star character with their signature weapon is literally worse than a free C0 4-star thanks to a broken artifact set that they are able to trigger. Then with Xilonen coming out, this fashion designer stands literally no chance in being a Navia partner anymore. Maybe she should use her abilities to design herself a better kit, man, because this is just tragic. A C1 R1 Chiori is pretty decent, but because of Xilonen, that still won't make the cut for Navia. You have to get C1 R1 for her to start beating Cinder City Kachina. So what does that mean for Chiori versus Xilonen, huh? You get the point by this stage. Outside of Itto comps, there is no justifiable reason to use this character anymore. Both Kachina and Xilonen shoved her into early retirement. I'm seriously shocked that a character who isn't even a year old is already quote-unquote useless by meta standards. I will say that Chiori's signature weapon is really good. It's great on Farina, Alhaitham, DPS Xilonen, or even teams where Xilonen is present, because a Geo reaction needs to be triggered by someone to unlock the second half of the passive. Any skill or normal attack-based sword DPS can use this nicely. Even if said DPS isn't skill or normal-based, the huge crit stick is lovely. If you're going after Xilonen's weapon this time around and you happen to lose to Uraku, don't feel too bad because you actually landed yourself quite the formidable sword. It's also a comically large increase to Chiori's own DPS output. You could also opt to play Chiori as an on-field DPS if you'd like. You can use Kachina to support her as her drill counts as a construct, and it will do pretty much fine. She isn't a crazy DPS, you'd obviously be better off playing any other main DPS, but it's a viable abyss clearing option for those of you who really like the character. She can also form a strong double Geo core of Zhongli. It's actually quite solid. The only reason it doesn't get much attention is because other cores tend to be stronger, such as double Hydro or double Pyro. Still something worth considering, however. C tier, her value is minimal, and since Itto isn't anything to write home about himself, her synergy with him isn't all that impressive. It sucks, I do love this character's design, voice, and attitude, but I, in good faith, cannot recommend that you pull for this unit if you care about account value. Hu Tao is an interesting one, because I feel like people underestimate her a bit nowadays. Listen, yes, Linny is obviously a lot better, he is an S tier DPS. Arlecchino is obviously a lot better, she is an S tier DPS. That doesn't make this character bad though, because I consider Vasili's funeral director to be a high A tier DPS. Considering that Hu Tao is extremely old, like this woman literally came out all the way back in 1.3, it's seriously impressive that she's still a good DPS. C0 is nowhere near as bad as it used to be. That's thanks to Xianyan, who offers Hu Tao the chance to weave plunges into her regular combos, making stamina management far easier. The healing is also not too bad either because of Farina. It's worth losing the extra 33% pyro damage bonus for the 40 to 50% damage bonus that a C0 Farina provides on average. Throwing Farina constellations into the mix definitely sweetens the deal too. I'd say an interesting change that happened to Tao is that because you aren't consistently going to have low HP on her anymore, Staff of the Scarlet Sands is actually going to be her best in slot in Farina teams now. Homa is still good of course, but you won't be proccing its passive as reliably. C1 is still nice though, because then you can ditch the plunging for this team instead, which uses Bennett, which is actually even better for her. This kid, while he's still really contested, isn't as required for every single team ever like he was before, so it's easier to spare Bennett for this team. Scarlet Sands is still better than Homa in this scenario, by the way. Or if you really enjoy plunging, then you could always go the C2 Xianyun route instead. Up to you. Even her traditional double Hydra team, even if it's not as strong as her modern teams, still isn't bad either. I still find myself clearing pretty well with it, but I have C1. The C0 to 1 disparity is so much worse in her older teams, but the main point that I want to make is that her old comps aren't that bad either. So no, Hu Tao is not a bad character. I don't think you really need her if you have Linny or Arlecchino, as those two are in fact better pyro DPSs. Linny is harder to play, but he's so freaking strong that it's incredibly worth learning him, and Arla is much easier to play down at C0 while offering more damage. Plus, vertical investment on both of these characters is a lot better than vertical on Hu Tao. Primo investment is crazy for her C1 or 1, then everything beyond that is whatever for the funeral director. She's getting placed in A tier for this patch's value charts. Hu Tao is still strong and will still be better than quite a lot of the DPS competition. Her real downfall in value is the sheer absurdity of Linny and Arlecchino. No reason to get her if you have either of those two, but with that being said, no need to get either of those two if you have a good Hu Tao team. She still clears very well in my opinion, even if those two are chunky upgrades. Nahida. She's obviously incredible because this character essentially makes and breaks the Dendro element. We all know how strong she is for every single Sumeru character. I don't think you need me to tell you what you've heard about her over and over again. We already know that she's the absolute GOAT of Sumeru. Instead, I'd like to focus on what she can do for Fontaine and Outland characters. For Fontaine units, she can enable Nervy Bloom core comps, which is a pretty silly team archetype. Whether it be Bountiful Cores Bloom or Hyper Bloom, she will assist just fine in this archetype for the Hydro Dragon. Chloriander can also make pretty neat use of her in Aggravate. We love big EM share in this household. As always, the main issue with Nahida and aggro teams is that her Dendro app is so freaking strong to the point where it can be kind of difficult to swirl Electro at times, so make sure to swirl Electro first before applying Nahida's Dendro marks. She's also proven to be excellent for Mualani Burn Vape. This is once again thanks to her huge EM share. The Shark Surfer seriously appreciates the large level of buffing that she offers, plus Nahida's Dendro app is just very neat for her burning team. She's able to sustain the pyro application wonderfully. I'd say one main negative of Nahida's is her multi-wave issues. This is no deal breaker, obviously, but it is still something that needs to be addressed. Essentially, Nahida has to constantly reapply her Dendro marks for each new enemy wave that comes in. This is pretty annoying for characters such as Mualani and Sino, who might still be in their damaging state after killing the currently marked enemies. Your only option is to cut their uptime short and reapply those Dendro marks. Another point against Nahida is that she's replaceable in some situations. If you have Emily, no need to pick up Nahida from Mualani. Plus, the Perfumer is simply better in Kenichi teams on the whole, and if you're not using her, then you're using Baiju instead. So Nahida's not a must-have for the Nalon cast because you have other good options. Regardless, those should not be deal breakers if you're somebody who loves playing Dendro in general, or if you want to use her with Mualani, S tier below Xilonen. Definitely be certain of what you want when pulling for characters this patch is my personal advice. Xilonen is the only true groundbreaker here. I'd say that with the other three, make sure you have specific plans in mind as to what you want to do with them before you pull. Nahida's excellent too, of course, but only if you like Dendro or Burn Vape teams. Xilonen is my meta recommendation this patch, but design-wise, I think Chiori or Hu Tao are the ones to go for. Can't choose between their designs, I really like how they both look. Of course, pull for whoever you want, but it's good to remain educated so you know what you're getting for your Primos. Hopefully this video was able to tell you who'd get you the best bang for your Primogem in version 5.0. This has been Juice, signing out, and please, Hoyo, let Riesli out of the basement. I had to skip this absolutely peak man for C6 Farina. Please, he's so peak, man, let him out of the basement.